over 100 of Russia's elite T-90M tanks, the spearhead of Moscow's armored forces, now lie ruined across eastern Ukraine, reduced to burning wrecks in a few short days. What was designed as a decisive armored breakthrough instead collapsed into an absolute tank graveyard, leaving our strategic analysts stunned and raising serious questions about Russian armored combat doctrine. The T-90M, built to counter Western weapons like Javelins and NLAWs, was hailed as virtually invincible. Yet across the open fields of Donetsk, these $4 million machines were outmatched by cheap FPV, drones, mines, and layered defense systems that turned raw power into fatal vulnerability. The scale of this attrition is alarming. Battlefield intelligence confirms over 1,100 Russian tanks destroyed by September 2025, including 90 T-90Ms. Drone operations alone are responsible for up to 70% of frontline vehicle losses in key sectors, a reality that signals a massive shift in modern warfare. A single $200 drone destroying a tank, worth millions, shows how the balance of cost and battlefield lethality is being rewritten in real time. For those of us analyzing these battles, more than just a typical tactical clash, it is a warning sign that heavy armor, once seen as the backbone of ground combat, may no longer guarantee operational victory. The critical tactical question now remains: can heavy tanks adapt and survive in this drone age? Or has modern conflict entered a new phase where low-cost tech dominates the battlefield? Russia launched a massive combined arms assault in Donetsk, deploying their advanced T-90M tanks alongside BMPs. APCS and mechanized infantry deployed to shatter the Ukrainian defensive lines and capture critical strategic ground. In late September 2025, Moscow's planners deployed these heavy armored assets, attempting to shift momentum after consecutive years of operational setbacks. This was no random assault. It was a deliberate offensive born from previous failures with Russian command banking on sheer armored mass to overwhelm the defenders. The T-90M, fitted with reactive armor and advanced targeting, was designed to spearhead the assault, backed by BMP, tactical combat vehicles and armored personnel carriers holding over a dozen infantrymen each. Moscow staff officers believe this force package could breach any defense securing key strongpoints, like in the sectors near Kupiansk, a vital supply logistics corridor. But that tactical confidence wasn't just material strength. It stemmed from bold assertions by state propaganda, which hailed the T-90M as invincible, built to withstand high-end Western threats like Javelin and NLAW missiles. State agencies like TASS emphasized the platform's heavy armor and electronic countermeasures, calling the asset a decisive weapon that could survive the deadliest armor defeating systems. They showed the T-90M surviving simulated missile threats, suggesting they could dominate the modern battle space. This strategic messaging projected an image of absolute dominance, rallying domestic support while intimidating adversaries. But it concealed a critical flaw in Russian doctrine. Behind the screen, Moscow's strategy relied on archaic Soviet armor doctrine. Deploy heavy armor to punch holes, then deploying infantry to consolidate and hold ground. This doctrine, forged in the Cold War, relies entirely on overwhelming mass, rather than precision intelligence or flexibility. Columns of T-90Ms advancing in predictable patterns intending to crush. Resistance through brute force and BMPs, and APCs shielding troops as they exploit the breach. In one engagement, an armored column near Donetsk fielded over 20 combat vehicles, expecting to overrun defensive positions. with a single surge. But this doctrine ignored tactical realities of modern combat, where technology and tactical preparation will outmatch raw might. Our intelligence quickly identified this vulnerability, noting that they were repeating severe blunders from previous campaigns of 2022 and 23. Defense think tanks like the Center for Strategic and International Studies note that this reliance on mass armor lacking active reconnaissance or counter-drone screening leaves them highly vulnerable to evolving tactics. A 2025 dispatch detailed how their field commanders underestimated the defensive ability to adapt, assuming mere numerical superiority would be sufficient to secure victory. This systemic arrogance set the stage for a brutal combat check, as the defenders had already prepared a lethal ambush. The attrition rate tells a grim story. I have lost over 22,000 major assets since hostilities commenced, with armor like the T-90M representing a major share. According to Oryx's verified intelligence, in 2025 alone, commanders sent hundreds of heavy armor into Donetsk, attempting to shift the operational momentum. Yet each failed. This blind assault only lengthened the tally of wrecks. How does a modern army miscalculate the threat so completely? To analyze why in their spearhead fractured, we must study the defensive doctrine which converted Donetsk into a lethal trap for heavy armored formations. The defenders engineered Donetsk into a killing zone for advancing columns using a highly coordinated, multi-layered defense that fused persistent surveillance, concealed ordnance, and precise Western anti-armor systems. The defensive scheme relied on unmanned surveillance assets, patrolling the sector, plotting every avenue of approach to generate a fire control map for targeting armor. These airborne sensor platforms operating day and night streamed live telemetry to tactical headquarters, rendering enemy maneuvers completely transparent. The defenders utilized high-resolution imagery to map armored threats near Kupiansk, pre-registering target coordinates for defensive fires before the assault commenced. Below the sensor layer, combat engineers had seeded dense anti-tank minefields along critical axes, turning open terrain into a concealed killing ground. These mines, often 3D printed for rapid deployment, were meticulously camouflaged, resulting in tactical footage later released by headquarters to demonstrate the system's catastrophic lethality. Recorded telemetry captures one mine, vaporizing an armored hull, the detonation creating a physical block that stalled the entire advance. To reinforce this, they integrated guided anti-tank systems like Javelin and NLAW weapons at key positions. We stood ready to engage any armored threat. These weapons, designed with fire and forget tech, let our squads strike armor from kilometers away, crushing their most heavily fortified units. Our precision artillery, including modern howitzers, was pre-registered to fire on advancing hostile forces, directed by live drone intelligence to maximize damage. Our gunners pulled coordinates directly from drones to target a hostile convoy entering Donetsk, vaporizing multiple vehicles before they ever reached the front lines. To reinforce this perimeter, Western supplied armor like Leopard 2 Abrams and Bradley fighting vehicles formed our fast mobile reserve, ready to counterattack when ordered. Our 47th Mechanized Brigade depended on these platforms, our Bradleys, using rapid-fire cannons with lethal effect against lighter hostile armor in recent engagement. This tight integration of drones, mines, missiles, and heavy artillery formed a lethal web, transforming any enemy push into a target-rich environment. We rejected outdated doctrines that rely on trench lines. Our defensive scheme was fluid fusing tech with rigorous tactical planning to break a larger adversary. This defense in depth meant that if one system went down, others would compensate, leaving no gap to be penetrated. Avoid a mine and my Javelin operators would still destroy the threat, or our artillery would quickly finish the job. This battle layout wasn't improvised. It was the payoff of intense training with our operational staff adapting lessons from previous engagements to refine our tactics. By September 2025, our lines were so lethal, the enemy suffered more than 22,000 combat assets, including hundreds of battle tanks, according to Oryx's verified data. Drones alone claimed 60 to 70% of Russian vehicle losses across several sectors, proving Ukraine's supreme technological edge, as confirmed by the Royal United Services Institute in August 2025. This layered defensive doctrine did not just hold the line, it turned Donetsk into a killing zone for Russian ambitions, exploiting their reliance on brute force. Which element of this defense drone's mines or missiles is the decisive tactical force multipliée? Now, observe how this kill zone sprang into action, decimating Russia's initial wave of heavy armor and infantry in mere minutes. Ukrainian defense grids sprang into action, neutralizing the initial assault with a lethal mix of drones, mines, and aggressive counterattacks by the 47th Mechanized Brigade. As hostile columns penetrated Donetsk, a T-90M tank led the assault firing on Ukrainian lines, but a first-person view drone dove in, striking the turret with absolute precision, accuracy. The impact detonated the tank's ammunition, triggering an explosive blast, illuminating the combat zone, reducing the modern armor to a smoking ruin. Soon, another T-90M pushed ahead, seeking to regain tactical initiative, but it struck a concealed mine, triggering the blast that completely ripped the châssis. The detonation scattered shrapnel across the sector, offering the crew zero chance of survival. This was a severe blow to Russia's armored spearhead. Next, a hostile infantry carrier, packed with over a dozen troops. Their infantry attempted to withdraw after disembarking, only to strike a concealed mine, triggering a catastrophic tactical explosion. This loss, verified by daily tactical intelligence reports, neutralized the entire crew, crippling their combat ability to sustain their infantry push. The 47th Mechanized Brigade seized the initiative, launching a counteroffensive with Bradley fighting vehicles whose rapid autocannons completely shredded enemy trenches and bunkers. Drones assisted targeting hostile infantry during their disorganized retreat, preventing any escape through the heavily contested terrain. This chaos shattered their tactical cohesion. One combatant, isolated and out of tactical options, abandoned his weapon and surrendered to defending forces. This rapid defense was more than firepower. It was a masterclass in coordination, integrating drone strikes with armored maneuvers to maximize impact. Every maneuver was calculated, with the 47th Brigade exploiting the panic caused by mine detonations and aerial attacks to control the engagement. This opening phase cost them dearly, with Oryx documenting over 1,100 tanks lost by September 2025, including dozens of T-90M units in operations. The psychological impact was equally severe. Opposing forces, watching their vanguard burn, experienced a collapse in morale that turned every subsequent advance into a gamble. This ability to transform an aggressive offensive into a disaster demonstrates how tactical superiority and technology can outmatch sheer mass. If you analyze how tactical drones and Bradley's neutralized these heavy armor pushes, subscribe and share your combat analysis. In your assessment, which asset dominated this battle space during this engagement? With the first assault wave utterly decimated, let's examine how their command attempted to counterattack using tactical air power only to hit the same kinetic kill zones. The enemy escalated the assault utilizing air, assets, and rotary wings to soften the defensive line. Yet their efforts fractured against the very same relentless ambushes, compounding heavy casualties in a feedback loop of tactical attrition. Once their initial mechanized thrust are faltered, the adversary shifted tactics, deploying guided glide bombs from strike fighters to degrade fortified defensive positions before committing secondary armored columns. These precise standoff munitions, released from high-altitude envelopes aimed to breach fortified defensive lines, targeting subterranean bunkers and command hubs. In Donetsk, heavy attack helicopters, armed with rockets, penetrated forward airspace to support armor, hoping to pave ingress routes for mechanized infantry by striking key tactical strongpoints. However, these low-flying platforms became vulnerable targets as the defenders' air defense network, including man-portable missile systems, acquired target locks from miles away. Follow-on echelons of armored assets, comprising infantry combat vehicles, surged forward, anticipating close air support to clear their advance. Instead, they faced familiar obstacles, concealed minefields detonated under their treads, destroying heavy chassis, while FPV strike drones dove from above, hitting with absolute precision. During one engagement, an armored column of 5 platforms near Donetsk struck a minefield, with 2 detonating instantly, and the survivors pinned by relentless drone strikes. Defensive doctrine remained highly effective. They baited the adversary to commit forces, then struck hard, conserving their own combat power, while maximizing enemy combat attrition. This mobile defensive doctrine relied on patience, letting hostile units overextend before striking them with synchronized fire strikes. Tactical command utilized drone feeds to map movements, ensuring our artillery and strikes impacted exactly when hostile armor was highly exposed. This doctrine avoided direct engagements, keeping friendly casualties low while steadily degrading hostile resources. From my command post, the trend was clear. The more forces they committed, the heavier their defeat, creating a fatal cycle of tactical failures. Our active defense exposed their utter inability to adapt as their air and land operations failed to penetrate our heavily fortified defensive lines. The cognitive shock was immense. Enemy pilots and vehicle crews, expecting total dominance, faced constant threats from unseen kinetic weapons, shattering their resolve. Our capability to deny air superiority using ground networks proved a shift in modern conflict, where advanced platforms faltered against highly distributed networks. As their armor and aviation failed, they adopted a desperate new tactic, hoping rapid mobility could achieve what mass maneuvers could not. They deployed quad bikes and tactical motorcycles, hoping speed would bypass our strong defensive sectors. But localized drone interdiction annihilated this desperate attempt, leaving whole units utterly decimated. With their armor and aviation strikes, failing enemy commanders rolled out an unconventional maneuver, deploying highly agile platforms to bypass minefields and infiltrate hardened defensive lines. These unarmored mobile assets, packed with assault troops and anti-armor weapons, sought to bypass Ukrainian defensive obstacles by surging across Donetsk's broken terrain. The doctrine was simple: exploit extreme speed to outpace aerial surveillance, seize critical nodes, and rupture Ukrainian defensive cohesion before heavy armor could exploit. But Ukrainian surveillance drone assets monitoring the sector spotted the unit's dust trails from miles away, establishing target locks onto their vectors with lethal accuracy. Agile, explosive-laden strike drones dove in, rapidly impacting the fast-moving targets with catastrophic impacts, converting them into burning to debris. During a severe engagement near Bahadur in March 2025, Ukraine neutralized 15 bikes, inflicting 40 enemy casualties within a few minutes. Tactical feeds documented the routing. Adversary infantry scrambled for cover, seeking defilade beneath burning wrecks or sprinting for nearby ruins. Others occupied shallow scrapes, desperately clutching their weapons. Yet Ukrainian operators delivered precision munitions directly onto those positions, neutralizing entire squad-sized elements. This persistent pursuit denied them safe harbor. Surviving infantry reaching ruined buildings encountered devastating cluster munitions that pulverized their defensive positions. This engagement wasn't just about firepower. It demonstrated highly agile tactical adaptation, deploying low-cost tech to neutralize the adversary's desperate innovations. The adversary's motorcycle units, intended as a high-speed workaround, became easy targets, their velocity useless against aerial assets that adjusted course in milliseconds. In another tactical action, an 8-bike element attempted evasive maneuvers to avoid detection. Yet Ukrainian teams tracked them, deploying payloads that left those targets shattered and burning. Assault units expecting a rapid breakthrough were caught completely exposed, with hostile drones overhead acting like relentless predators. Destroyed assault bikes littering those Donetsk fields serve as a lesson. Modern conflict rewards intellect over mass. This engagement proves that Russian tactics failed to penetrate Ukraine's layered defense, reducing their desperate push to absolute ruin. As their offensives collapse, let us analyze the broader strategic picture, examining what this tactical failure means for the Kremlin's overall capabilities and future warfare. The total loss of their T-90M Kolomin, Donetsk, delivers a stark warning. Heavy numbers and expensive hardware no longer secure victory on today's lethal battlegrounds. Ukraine's integrated system blending, low-cost drones, dense minefields, precise artillery fire, and Western-supplied armor, like Bradley's, crushed Moscow's aggressive maneuver into a total disaster. This represents far more than a tactical defeat. It proves their legacy, tank-heavy doctrine born out of Soviet-era concepts, is failing against modern network-centric warfare. One single drone strike near Kupiansk killed a T-90M, proving a $200 asset can destroy a $4 million tank. This battle exposed critical structural vulnerabilities, shattering the myth of an invincible army while reinforcing Ukraine's strategic alliances. The core tactical question remains: will they continue sacrificing T-90 armor, hoping to shatter Kyiv's defensive lines? Or will commanders rewrite their doctrine to counter unmanned threats and asymmetric tactics? This outcome will redefine modern warfare as the heavy armor faces an existential crisis against highly agile networked threats. If Ukraine sustains NATO support with F-16 jets or ATACMS precision missiles, they could seize the tactical initiative, forcing Moscow to negotiate. But should Moscow escalate with strategic air, power, and strike drones, this war spills beyond these borders, threatening Europe's stability. You and I must analyze, has this era of armor ended? Or can these units adapt to survive this drone threat? Give your assessment below. I want your analysis. Let's expand our tactical assessment. How will these armored graveyards shape the next doctrine of modern combat?